welcome to Real Chicks Rock Presents Real Discussions. I'm your host for today, Michelle Dawes-Bird, and as always, I'm super excited to be here. It's a lovely day in the neighborhood here in Atlanta. We, like so many other people in the Southeast, experienced Hurricane Zeta. She came through Wednesday night, and unfortunately, quite a few of us still do not have power. A lot of people here in the Atlanta area do not have power. Traffic lights are out, so it's just been a couple of days of people trying to bounce back and get back on their feet. And so it's unfortunate that we don't have everyone that's going to be able to watch us today, but we're going to record it, so when people have power and it's restored, they'll be able to check us out. 75 million people have already early voted already. I mean, this is just historic. People have gotten out in the past 3 weeks or so and casted their votes early because it's just all votes matter. Everything is just critical at this point. The ballot and the ticket is going to be pretty heavy. A lot of people running for Senate, the presidential race, everything. And every minute when you're watching television, you're seeing a campaign commercial or ad come across or come through. If you have not early voted already, we encourage and ask, and please go and vote on Tuesday, November 3rd. Polls open as early as 7 a.m. I think they're going to be closing at 7 p.m. It's going to be something, right? Quite a few people will have mailed in their ballots as well. So again, every vote matters. Please do not think that yours does not, because it does. It's very important. Today's topic is dealing with sexual addictions. And I just want to thank everybody that has joined in and tuned in and provided comments and so forth for the show. Just want to give a little background for the new listeners today. It's all about creatively collaborating and connecting to raise awareness regarding the issues that impact women. We do it by so many different ways. We do it by community service efforts. We do it by public speaking. We mentor, and we do it through workshops, and we do it through this platform, the media, the arts. And so we've been doing this now for a little bit. You know, we enjoy it, and we have an opportunity to bring people in that we feel are subject matter experts to talk about the things that we think are important to us today. And today is no different. I have a guest on the phone, Mr. Eddie Capparucci, here to talk with us as we talk about the topic of dealing with sexual addictions. Hi, Eddie. How are you?
I'm well, Michelle. I'm in the light right now, so, you know, I was in the dark for a while, but we're good now.
I know. Congratulations. And I just want to give just a quick PSA for my other guests. Princess Lanclose. She's in Louisiana. Unfortunately, this has been the 5th storm to hit Louisiana, and quite a few people are still without power. She reached out to me from her cell phone and said, you know, her data connection is not good. There's no electricity. So unfortunately, Princess will not be able to join us today. We've had her on the show previously, and she was awesome. So we'll bring her back again in the future. But we just hope that for her and so many thousands of people that still do not have power, that they get their power quick, fast, and in a hurry, because it's been days now without power. But anyway, thanks, Eddie, for joining us. Glad you guys are in the light there in Marietta. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Eddie. Give us a little background about who you are, just a little bit.
Yeah, I will. It's a long story, so I'll try to keep it as
No,
brief
you're
as
fine.
I
Go
could.
and give it to us. Set us up, Eddie. Set us up.
Okay. I spent about 25 years in the corporate America. I was a marketing and advertising executive. Very successful, did really well in that. But throughout that entire time, even starting when I was probably about 14, 15, I had a sexual addiction of my own. Mm-hmm. And with that, you know, I carried out throughout my adult life until I was nearly almost 40 years old, about 38. I had destroyed 2 marriages because of it. But yet, to me, it was just, I had no idea why I did the things I used to do. But I was just, you know, more focused on my career and, you know, making that status for myself. And when I turned about my late 30s, and I said, you know, I'm really so tired of this. And I went and I sought therapy, and realized I had what was called a avoidant attachment disorder, which basically means that, you know, I would never let people very, very close to me. I'd always keep a wall up. And because of that, whenever I got into a relationship, I had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So therefore, I never really fully engaged with anyone. There was this fear that people would leave me, they would abandon me, based on things that had happened in my childhood. So therefore, that was part of the overall struggle. When I was in my late 30s and after I started getting healthy, I met this woman who still my wife today, 23, 24 years now. And she had a very Christian perspective to her. I had always been raised, I was raised in the Catholic Church. I used to go to church, but I was one of these Christians who just threw money in the collection plate and sat there on Sunday morning, and then I would leave and just go back to the world. But she got me into church, got me into a church that actually started to ground me about Christianity. And with that, my relationship with Christ really developed. But with that, what also happened is that he came and he said, look, you know what? We're not doing this anymore. I don't want you in corporate America. He goes, I have something else for you. And I was like, no, I don't like this idea at all. This is not a good idea. The bargain was I get close to you and that would be good enough. I fought him for about 2 years. If he wanted me to move into ministry, and that was the counseling ministry. And finally, I gave in. I said, fine, you win. Went back to school, got my master's in counseling, did all the state requirements that are needed here in Georgia, and set out and started my own private practice. And what started out as just a generalist, seeing everyone and anyone, whatever disorders they may struggle with. After a short period of time, all these men started coming into my practice that they looked just like me. They were going through the same problems I had, 10 years earlier. And it was like, this is bizarre. What is this about? And they were dealing with pornography addiction, sexual addiction. And I said, you know what? I think this is ultimately the reason why he put me here. So therefore, I went back and got more certifications in the area of treating both sex and pornography addiction. And since that time, my practice, my wife joined the practice about 5 years ago. She works with the women who have been betrayed. And I work exclusively with men who are dealing with sex addiction and pornography addiction, although I know it's also a growing problem among women. He had blessed our ministry beyond anything we could ever imagine. We see anywhere between 30 to 35 people a week. I turn away about 10 people a week, unfortunately, because I just don't have the bandwidth. Since my new book, Going Deeper, How the Inner Child Impacts Your Sexual Addiction, came out in February, I get calls from people not just here in Georgia, but throughout the country and actually throughout the world. And like I said, that's every single week. So we're actually going to be launching some training programs and things like that. And so anyway, that's just a quick synopsis of what I could tell you in 4 hours.
So I want to, if you don't mind, I'm going to pick apart some of the things that you said. I want to ask you, what did you do at corporate America? What was your job there?
I was in marketing and advertising. I worked in the pharmaceutical world. Okay. And what I was the director of client relationships. So therefore, client services. So therefore, I had a staff underneath me. We'd have the different accounts, and I was responsible for the account people who would be working with their client to figure out what are the promotional materials that they would be developing to sell their brand during the course of the next quarter, half year, even some cases an entire year.
Okay. And you did that for how long?
My whole corporate career was about 25 years. I spent the last probably 17 in advertising.
Okay, wow. So that's a long time. So Eddie, when did you realize that you liked pornography. You remember when you first got turned on to it and
Yeah.
that experience? If it's not too traumatic to talk about it, if you
No,
don't
no,
mind.
no,
Okay.
not for me. I've been in recovery for so long. It's not traumatic. I
Okay.
talk about this stuff all the time.
Okay.
No, I guess my first exposure to pornography was actually a little bit later. I was about 13, and I was exposed to it by friends in the neighborhood. I grew up in a neighborhood with like 14 other boys. I mean, we were a testosterone-driven neighborhood. Um, and some of them were able to get magazines from their older brothers or their fathers and things like that. And we go sit out in the woods or in the top of somebody's garage and just leaf through them. That was my first real exposure to it. And I guess it was about 15 that one of my friends invited several of us into his house where we saw our first porn movie. That was one of his dads. And that, I mean, because that was so graphic. And I think that was kind of like the turning point for me that I realized, oh my gosh, this could be a great distraction to the emotional distresses that I was going through and felt throughout my entire life up until that point of a teenager.
What kind of distresses were you feeling, Eddie, that you felt that the pornography would be a great escapism?
Well, let me go back again then. When I was 5, I was one of 4 children. I was the third in the birth ranking. My dad died when I was 5.
Okay.
And what happened is my mother had a nervous breakdown. And with that, each of the 4 kids were sent off to different relatives individually.
Okay.
So here I am at 5 years old. I'm with this family. I have no idea who they are. I don't know where my mother is. I don't know where my father is.
Yeah.
You know, my siblings. You know, I have no idea.
Right.
And we're gone for about a year. And then mom finally, thinks, okay, I'm better. I can bring everybody back. And she does. And then she has another nervous breakdown after just a couple weeks.
Wow.
So we get shipped out again to other people. And this time they send us to different relatives.
Right.
So now I'm with new people again. So by the time I come back and I'm now like 6.5, I got this worldview of the people who love you are not dependable. The people who love you will leave you.
Okay.
Nobody still had spoken to me about my father's death. Nobody ever did speak to me about my father's death till I was about 14 and asked my mother about it. We just didn't know what was going on.
Right.
My mom remarried when I was about 11, and he was an abusive guy. He wasn't that physically abusive, but he was very verbally abusive. And he knew that grounding you was the ultimate punishment. So we got grounded constantly. Their death. So while our friends were out there and we could hear them, we're stuck in the house. So it was that, living in that kind of environment, that abusive environment that had that distress that I went through.
Wow. Amazing. So you're liking pornography, or you've gotten exposed to it at 13. And so then it did become a regular ritual for you to just kind of continue to watch it with friends, or you just what kind of clicked in your mind to say, I really got to have more of this?
Yeah, well, it wasn't so much from the standpoint of pornography, because I really didn't have a lot of access to it. What it became for me were girls. When I was 15, all of a sudden it's like, oh, girls, and they just seemed to be everywhere. And so I started to date with them and hang out with them and experiment with them. And what I found was that just having one was not enough. I always needed more.
Okay.
And that started me on this pathway of being a womanizer. So while porn was a part of my life, it wasn't the emphasis of my sex addiction. The emphasis of my sex addiction were relationships. I wanted people to desire me. But even though they desired me, and of course I don't know this is all suppressed, there's a fear that, they're not going to stay. So that's why I pursue and bring them in. At the same time, I'm starting to look for what's the exit plan.
Okay. Fair enough. Eddie, I want to ask you, what is an addiction? Let's take it piece by piece. What is an addiction? What is the definition of that for you?
An addiction is any sort of behavior or substance that is utilized. First of all, one, we're misusing it, and two, it is used as an escape from our daily lives. Mm-hmm. And what it does, it has a negative consequence and impact on areas of our lives, mm-hmm. whether it be relationship, it be work. Addictions are something that over a period of time, the chemical imbalance in the brain start to develop because the neurochemicals that we are now raising or depleting, it becomes very problematic. So therefore now the brain is craving something. So now we have a chemical issue that goes on with both of it. So basically the bottom line is what an addiction is. It is an escape from our pain that we use, but what it does, it winds up causing additional pain in our lives.
Okay. So I want to add, what is a sex addiction? Because I know there might be different conduits and different types. So share with us, Eddie, a few of those, if you don't mind, sir.
Yeah, a sex addiction or a pornography addiction is when a person becomes preoccupied with sexuality. Whether it is just in the idea of a lot of racing thought that go on throughout the day, whether they are actually engaging or acting out, they're looking at porn, or perhaps they're engaging in some other problematic sexual behavior. But what makes it an addiction is that it is, once again, it is spilled over. Maybe they're isolating themselves. Instead of going to social events or hanging out with friends, they would rather stay home and watch porn. Maybe it's impacting their work because they're up until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and now you got to get up at 6 to go to work, and you're exhausted during the course of the day. Or even worse yet, you're looking and watching pornography while at work itself. I have had many clients who have been fired because of that. Or you are womanizing in work. You're objectifying the women that are there. And of course we saw with the whole Me Too movement, late last year, early this year, of how predominant that is in our culture today. So again, or it goes into and impacts your relationship. Your marriage, the fact that, what happens is through many studies, there's probably more than 100 different studies that show the harmful impact of pornography, including the fact that if a partner looks at porn, what they do is they find this sense of dissatisfaction with their own partner, whether it is the body image per se, or the fact that they will not engage in activities that someone views for porn. So now what we do is we see this divide that develops within relationships. So there's a host of different things that can take place that are all very harmful because of, problematic sexual issues.
I guess there's this is a very sensitive topic because things can be right on the borderline, or you think it could be normal behavior, and then if you're not careful, you might be opening up a Pandora's box if you're not careful. Because when two people engage in a sexual activity, there's a lot of different things that are introduced into that space to get people excited, right? So it could be masturbation, it could be, there's lots of foreplay, there could be some pornography, there's different things, so we're not here to knock how people choose to get down and have insight, but we just want to try to understand, right, when does it cross over into this negative space and it becomes this addiction, and how can we call out the different behaviors in our partner, right? So it's a very thin line, right, Eddie?
Is and what you can do, Michelle, there is to determine, the fact is when one of the partners is starting to feel uncomfortable with what's going on.
Okay.
And sometimes, in many cases, they're starting to feel used because it seems like, it's all about sex. We can't just make love. We have to have the three-ring circus involved in all of it each and every time. That is when you're crossing the line. See, if two people are in agreement, and I don't care what, because again, who are we? We are not, the moral police that we're going to sit here and say, you really shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. If a couple is in agreement, and they say, yes, this is okay, we're going to use this, whether it is a sex toy or pornography or certain position, whatever it may be, that's all. That's fine. That's all well. But when it crosses over, and I've had a lot of circumstances where, again, you have to remember what's happening since the advent of the internet back in the 90s. We've had a generation now that has been raised on, pornography. Right. And they're learning about sex through porn. So what they see, and especially pornography over the last maybe 15 years, have become very violent toward women, very degrading, humiliating. And they're looking at this and they're saying, oh, this is what women like. This is what we're supposed to do. Right. So we are teaching a culture of young boys that it's okay to objectify and in some cases abuse girls. And we're teaching a whole segment of girls, little girls, that it's okay to be objectified and to be used. Because that's where they're learning about sex nowadays. And that, to me, is the biggest issue, the biggest problem that we have, because they don't understand that, what they're looking at is not a healthy relationship. That is all physical, and there's no emotional component that is involved. And that is not the way God designed us to have relationships. We're supposed to be emotionally and physically connected. Yeah. So to me, that's the biggest fear that I have as we move forward with this.
It's a couple of things too here, Eddie, because we also want to flip it on the other side. I want to go back to one of your other statements, is that if a person isn't interested or is not consenting into these certain acts, it doesn't necessarily make that person a sex addict. They could just be a pair or people that are just not sexually compatible. So I just want to say that, right? So there are certain things that certain people don't want to do, they don't want to get into, and the other partner might. That doesn't necessarily mean that's an issue. Could just mean that you guys are not sexually compatible. So deal with that.
Correct.
Right?
Well, I think what I'm talking about, Michelle, is like, for example, I had quite a few women who have come into this practice with their husbands and have been upset because their husband had talked them into engaging in sex with other people. Okay. They brought other individuals into the relationship. Right. And as you listen to them, and they pretty much all mirror the same thing with what they say. The reason I did it was I was afraid. I was afraid if I didn't do it, he was going to go somewhere else to find it. Wow. And so therefore I felt I need it. But now that it's been done, I feel degraded and I feel used. Yeah. So it's those types of situations that we're talking about. But no, you're right. If two people, if somebody, there's a certain preference somebody has for a position and the other person doesn't, yeah, really, whatever it may be, I stand on your head, whatever it may be. I don't like standing on my head. Yeah, right. I'm not doing that. That's not breaking. That's not going to make or break a relationship. Right. And people learn how to navigate that. That's part of healthy sexuality. We learn to navigate in healthy relationships. But when you got somebody who keeps forcing it on them, if you only loved me, to start using that manipulation. If you really cared, you know how important this is to me. And that's the other part of people who suffer from these addictions. They have very, low emotional IQs, and two, they are emotionally immature.
Okay. Wow, that's good to know. That's good to know, Eddie. I want to talk about the kids too, because you raised a very excellent point there. The internet is everything, right? You learn everything on the internet, and you're absolutely right. We may have come up in a time where there at least there was, and I'm air quoting, a sex education counselor, right, in school, right? There was some talk about sex education. Then we also might have had parents, some of us, that didn't talk about it at all. So you did kind of learn from what you knew in the streets or from your friend, maybe in a magazine. Playboy was the thing, Hustler magazine, picking up images, people talking, trying to figure things out. I think it was trial and error in most cases because we didn't have the internet. We didn't have access to everything. And so now you have a generation of people that are middle-aged trying to find out what their sexuality is, right? Oftentimes, first marriage didn't work. Sex and finances might have been the issue. Now they're in the second part of their life. They're coming out. They know what their sexuality is, so they're very direct in what they want, but we still don't have all the answers. And now we have these children, our kids. We don't, teenagers, young adults, where are they getting the information? It's from the internet. So how do we bridge the gap to educate our just younger people, young adults better? Is it through our faith, through Christianity? Is there other vehicles or mechanisms to help them get that balance as to what sex should be offering to them?
I think one thing is programs like yours, Michelle, what you're doing. You're sitting here and you're giving out information as you talked about before when you started the show, what your mission is. Yeah. And that's part of that, of what we need. We need more people out there talking about, hey, you know what you've been watching on porn for the last 15, 20 years does not equate with the ideal relationship. And you're going to wind up in a world of hurt if you're going to continue to expect your partner to be acting like this or looking like this.
Right.
We've all heard the stories of men who have pushed women to get breast implants, okay?
Yeah.
And, women didn't really want to do it, but they did it. And then later on, of course, they regret it. We need to be able to stop being so shy about pointing out some of the dangers of pornography versus just kind of passively sitting in the background and saying it's okay. And I'll give you another example, because as you can imagine, I get men who get dragged in here by their wives and they're looking at porn and the guy's there and he's telling me, he goes, I don't see anything wrong with porn. There's nothing wrong with porn. I go, all right. So I go, then tell me this then. Tell me about that 12-year-old girl you met, all right? And you asked her, hey, honey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, well, I think I want to take my clothes off in front of a camera and have sex with strange men and women. When did you meet her? And of course, none of them have an answer to that. I go, yeah, because you know what? If that girl exists, and my guess is there are some that do exist, someone or someones have hurt her very badly.
Right.
Okay. And that is why we look and we see these people. When you look at the horror stories that come out for people who have left the industry and they start to give their testimony about what goes on there and how they got roped into all of it and the regret for doing it. It is enormous. Now, yes, I do know that some people go into it because financial reasons at times, okay? There is that. But there's also great shame that comes when they leave it, because now it is, hey, guess what? You're out there for the rest of the world to see forever. So whether you go to get married, whether you have kids, you're out there forever. We had a teacher, I forgot where it was, I think it might have been in Arizona or Texas earlier this year, who got outed because she was in porn about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And some of her students found the images, and she was, of course, dismissed because of it.
Eddie, do you think that a sexual addiction can be part of someone's DNA? Like sometimes we have eating disorders and other type of things. Like, and I don't want to belittle or make it common, like a sexual addiction, like a food or shopping an addiction is addiction, but this is something we don't talk about a lot. But I just want to ask, do you think it's something that could be in our DNA or passed down generationally? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't. I mean, I think it's more environmental.
Okay.
And I think it's really driven by childhood pain points from the past.
Okay.
And what's happening is because of whatever hurts we have, we are looking to distract ourselves from sitting with the discomfort that we feel. So whether it is that we pick up, alcohol, if we start smoking pot, if we start turning to gambling, I start turning to sports constantly. I just become that guy who sits in, my basement like today, football, football day from 1 until midnight tonight, ignoring my family, all of that. That is because I don't want to sit with whatever discomfort I have. So I really truly believe that it is more along the lines of those unresolved childhood pain points that have not been resolved, especially when we're talking about things such as food addictions, any behavioral type of addiction. When you get to drugs and you get to alcohol, there's something a little bit different when we're talking about substances. There have been studies that have been done to try to find out, is there the genetic factor involved? Nothing has been conclusive yet. We can't say there's a gene that gets passed on from person to person. But I will say this is, again, I still think a lot of that is driven environmentally. If you grow up in a home with an alcoholic, your risk of becoming an alcoholic has increased because that may be your source of, winding, to get out of the discomfort you feel. But you could take on many other sorts of types of behavior. You could become, the people pleaser. You could be very codependent. I want to clean up the mess all the time. So there's different things depending on, again, I think how you were grounded and was the early childhood development, those different stages you went through where we learned how to attune, and see people's, emotional state and understand it. Were we able to regulate our emotional pain? Think about it. If you're a kid and you're in all this emotional pain and nobody's helping you deal with it, what do you do? Well, kids aren't going to hold on to it because what's going to happen is they're going to become depressed. So what they do is they, again, not having a lot of worldly experiences and being driven more by emotional thinking than cognitive thinking, they're going to come up with the one simple solution. I'm not going to think about it. And how do they not think about it? They find a distraction. Too much food. Too much TV. Ooh, that porn stash. And now I get to disassociate for a while. Because all I'm doing is I'm getting this soothing that is overcoming me. What problems? I don't know. That's the last thing in the world I can think about right now is a problem.
Right. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not really designed to replace love. It's just a distraction to just numb the pain, right, of what we feel is missing from our earlier experience as a kid, right? Yes.
In fact, what we're really seeking almost in any addiction is what we really want is emotional intimacy. We just don't know that's what we're looking for, and we don't even know in many cases what that looks like. Okay, I mean, if you go back, and I spent a year working in a residential program with people who are dealing with alcohol and drug addictions, and every single one of them, if you go back to the family of origin, you are going to find trauma and neglect. Trauma and neglect. And at some point, as whether, in their early youth or later at teens, and sometimes even a little later, they come across something that helps them to deal with this constant state of feeling uncomfortable. And that is when they turn to drugs or to alcohol. Now the group that I deal with, they turn to sex and porn.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the emotional intimacy, because even some of us that don't have addictions, we could be struggling with that. So maybe just define what that is. Is that space or place where we need, Eddie, that love affirmation, the I love yous, the concerning ear, the listening, I'm proud of you. Is it those type of conversations or things that we might not have gotten as a kid, and maybe some of us, we still need it now, creates that emotional intimacy that we're looking for?
Yes, Michelle, that's exactly what it is. Again, we go back to the early childhood development, and at some point there, to your point, we don't receive the affirmations. Maybe what we receive instead is a lot of criticism. We don't receive the attention. But more importantly is we never learn how to present our pain and hurt and then be validated. Instead, when we sit here to try to talk about things that are painful, they are either minimized, such as it's not a big deal, don't bother me with that, what's wrong with you,
Suck it up.
Suck it up. Or somebody's going to try to fix it. I'll tell you, this was a client who, she suffered from an alcohol problem, very severe alcohol problem, and she also had a weight problem too. Her mother was extremely abusive. Her father, very passive, never interjected, never stood up for the daughter. Just let mom, rail on her. And then after they were done, he would take her and buy her ice cream, go buy her candy, go buy cake.
Right.
She learned, okay, if I'm upset, put food in your mouth, therefore you stuff down all the negativity. And that's what she learned by doing that. And it's the same thing as if you stumble across sex and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this is like the ultimate of all distraction. Remember what I told you, the kid looking for a distraction?
Right.
Well, yeah, sitting there and playing basketball in the backyard by myself for 2 or 3 hours is a distraction. But this is like the mother of all distractions. and now it becomes the go-to for them.
Eddie, what is hypersexuality?
It's basically another word for sexual addiction. I mean, whether you say it's hypersexuality, if you call it problematic sexual behavior, you call sex addiction, call it porn addiction, it's all the same. What it is that your focus, most of the focus that you have throughout the day will come back to sex. So even if you're sitting there and you're doing work, at some point, here comes a fantasy or an image, and now all of a sudden you start gravitating to something else on your computer. So that's it. It's just another word. There's so many terms that are out there for it. I'm actually moving more toward the problematic sexual behaviors than I am even to a sex addiction as I move forward in my practice.
When I met you, we talked before, offline in the green room and all that kind of thing. And there was another buzzword that you used, and I want to give you the opportunity to talk more about it: fetishes. So I want to talk about fetishes and what that means, and what does it mean, and how does one acquire them, and what are the different types of fetishes in the sexual space?
Right. A fetish is it could be an object. It could be, most of the time it's an object of some sort. But what it basically is that is something that a person needs in order to be sexually satisfied. So the biggest one we hear most of the time are articles of clothing. Who's into a shoe, or who's into stockings or lingerie and things like that. But there are all types of fetishes. That go to the far, far extreme of the spectrum that you would never even imagine. There are people who have fetishes about amputees. So if a person doesn't have arms or legs, they get very excited about something like that. You have people who have a fetish about the idea of, being with someone who, is ill in some way. You may have fetishes about, the idea of people who want to have sex with corpse. There are just so many different things. There are some people who claim to have a fetish with their car, that the only place they get excited about having sex is if they're in the car itself.
Okay.
So it becomes, what it comes down to is a fetish is created and developed as something that becomes an imprint in us at a very young age. So therefore, what's going on is we confuse it with nurturing. Okay, so let's say you have a man who's really, let's say he's into shoes, and he had a mother who was somewhat distant from him. Didn't really pay that much attention, was not touchy-feely. But the one thing he remembers so much about that mom was she had this amazing collection of shoes. It was always walking around in her heels or whatever types of shoes she had. And for him, those shoes represented the sense of comfort. He sexualized those.
Wow.
And so therefore now, when he's having sex with someone, he is requesting, can you put shoes on here? So, but basically, that's basically what it is. Some people, fetishes can become so strong that they will not be able to really become aroused or to finish or to even be anywhere excited about sex if that item is not in the location of where they're trying to have sex.
Wow. That's a lot, Eddie.
It is a lot.
It's a lot. Because I feel that, for people that are sexually active and having sex, we don't know what goes on in their room. I'm just thinking about what you're saying, and I'm like, some of it is like my eyes are rolling in the back of my head because I'm like, I'm not, I'm not on that page. I'm not thinking like that. Right. But again, I think things are fine within consent. Like if two people are consenting, then it's fine. Then it's an issue when then it's not. And then it's, I guess this is why people have reservations about talking about sex, because it is opening up like a Pandora box, because there's so many different levels and types of engagement and things and toys and fetishes and people, and there's just there's just so much. And so again, it's not to call out the negative all the time, but it's also trying to help people find their way to good and healthy relationships. So I want to talk about the therapy piece, right? So as we realize that there might be something that's not quite right with us as an individual, I guess like in any addiction, the first step is possibly admitting that you need some form of help, right? Or maybe there's an intervention. So does therapy really actually work for people that are struggling and dealing with sexual addictions?
It will work as long as the person who comes into therapy is going to work at therapy.
Gotcha.
If they are not going to put forth the effort that they need to put forth, no, it's not going to work. But yes, there have been so much has been done in the area of sexual addiction, pornography addiction over the past 40 years, and there's a lot of really good approaches. I actually created my own approach that's called the inner child recovery process, where basically what we're doing is, again, as I said to you before, I believe is our childhood pain points that still haunt us today. So with my clients are learning about their inner child.
Right.
Who is that kid that's inside you? Who hurt him? How did they hurt him? What are those core emotional triggers that happened today because a negative event happened that activates your kid? And now, again, we're just looking for comfort, so we're off and running. The compulsive behavior takes over, and we go to seek some sort of comfort.
Right.
By understanding what are those core emotional triggers, I now can manage my kid. I can sit here and say, hey, you know what? I know you're troubled. I know what you're hurt by. I've been in your storage unit and I've seen all those pain points that you have. But guess what? I can help. I can protect you. I know what to do. See, back then, we didn't know what to do. We didn't know how to handle this. We didn't have the experience. So therefore, we did it your way. We just would run off and, please ourselves. We don't have to do that today because I can sit here and I put it to wise mind. So I teach people what I feel, what you feel versus what is real are usually two very different things. And what you feel is your inner child who's just running amok because he's stuck in that pain spot back there. You have to take that and you have to put it to reality and say, is this really true? Is this really what's going on here today? You felt like something happened where you felt rejected, and the kid goes back and he pulls out something about mom and dad rejecting on a constant basis. But maybe what just happened now was not a rejection. Maybe you think it might be a rejection, but you need more information at that point to make that determination. So yes, therapy can be extremely effective for people, but it all depends on the amount of time and effort they will put in. For me, in my therapeutic approaches, 80% of what we do is about insight. Why? We're answering the why question. Why does sex have a strong hold on my life? And because I believe if I can answer that question, that empowers me in the future to be able to manage it.
Eddie, you speak a lot from a male's point of view from your clients. Do you have women that are dealing with sexual addictions that come see you for counseling and therapy?
From an ethical standpoint, as a former sex addict myself, and not really former, I'm a recovering sex addict. No, I do not work with women. However, we're seeing that is becoming more and more of a growing issue. Again, with the availability of porn. Because now, girls getting on there and seeing it and being just sometimes as curious as boys are. And we're looking and we're seeing that perhaps what we're going to wind up with, right now is probably about 15% of all those who struggle with a pornography addiction are women. But that number is growing rapidly. And I would not be surprised within the next 10 years if we're at 25 or even more percent with that.
Share with me.
And really interesting, I'll tell you real fast one case. Remember, we were talking about, when people agree on a sexual practice that, that's okay. Well, I had this woman who called and she said, my husband, he's looking at pornography and it's really impacting our marriage and I really want to do something. I go, all right, well, come on in. And they came in and, we're sitting there talking about that to begin with. And he goes, well, you know what? He goes, we watch porn together. And so I turned to her and I go, you watch porn together? And she goes, yeah. She goes, I enjoy watching porn. I go, okay, then why are you sitting here then? She goes, well, I don't want him watching porn by himself.
Okay. Okay. It's a problem when he's watching.
You must have been in here. That was exactly my response.
It's a problem if you're watching it without me, but it's not a problem if we're watching it together. Got it.
Correct. So therefore, now make him stop doing it.
Make him stop. Come on, Eddie. Make him cut it out. Make him swear he's going to stop doing that.
I go, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. I go, because you want me, we're trying to calm down all the racing thoughts that pornography brings. Okay? And what you're asking me to do is, okay, no, just limit that for a certain period of time, and then the rest of the time it's okay. But it doesn't work that way. I can't do that. It's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing.
I can't do that.
Eddie, I want to talk about the great work that your wife is doing. Again, you talked about with, unfortunately, your relationships. They didn't work because of your addiction and your former addiction. Your marriages didn't work. And now, you've been blessed with a beautiful wife and she's getting in there helping. And there's another side to it. There is this hurt for women that, unfortunately, are in these relationships or in these spaces with men that are dealing with sexual addictions. And so women would need an outlet. So talk to me a little bit more about the type of work that your wife is doing and what kind of services are out there, because there could be women that are listening that are like, I believe my partner is struggling in this. I don't even know where to begin to get help, because the first thing we deal with is embarrassment. We're always dealing with the embarrassment piece of it. And then there's a fear factor, because if you married someone, it's for better, for worse. And so there's a consciousness with us that says, well, this is this better or worse piece, right? I want to kind of be here with my husband as he deals with this. But then it puts us in this space of we're not good enough. There's this rejection. There's this lack of trust, because I don't know if when my husband or spouse or partner's not with me, is he doing, continuing to indulge in this sexual addictive type of behavior. So tell us a little bit about what your wife is able to offer, the services that are out there for the women that want to stand by and support their husbands through this.
Yeah, and actually, until she came into the practice, I actually worked with the women also. So I worked with the husband and the woman. First and foremost, it is, educating women and letting them know that this is not about you. That in nearly every case, the problems that are being seen came into the marriage. All right, there's been something going on for a long, long time. So therefore, it's not about what they are doing wrong or the fact that they're not good enough. Okay. It is about his problem. The second thing is what the real thing that my wife works very much with them on is creating boundaries. Okay, we need good, solid boundaries. To your point, Michelle, so this way I'm not always worried where you are, what you're doing. And in the early stages, those boundaries are pretty tight. So therefore, we may have GPS tracking on your phone so we know where you're at. We may have software devices that are on all electronics. So if you go to you can't go into certain websites. I've seen wives who, especially when we wind up having men who get involved with affairs or prostitutes or massage parlors and things like that, that, we are burning clothes, we are selling homes, we are selling cars. We're going to the extreme to get rid of every and anything that serves as a trigger for her. And I'm not saying any of that is wrong. Because one thing we need to do is we have to create safety, and that's what Terry does. She says, what's going to make you safe? And then she'll share that with me. Because most of the time I'm working with the husband, she's working with the spouse. And although we do have our own separate clients at times, and I'll say, okay, what does she need to be safe? And now I'm working with him to say, here, this is what we have to implement now. But it's all about safety. That's what it's all about at the beginning, in order to help them start to heal. Because they've been traumatized. That's what we're dealing with, is trauma. The biggest problem I have with my guys, that's why I call them my guys, is that, it's not even helping them get through their sexual addiction or pornography addiction. It's getting them through helping to deal with their wives who are grieving. Because, again, they have a barrel of rocks, which they should, and they're throwing them at them, which is okay, and these guys can't take it. And it's like, no, you have to take it. Yeah, but it hurts. Duh. Okay. What do you think going on with her? That's her. What do you think she's doing? She's suffering here. And I'll say this, last thing about this, is my loyalty. Even though I work with the men, my loyalty lies with those women. So I will never push a man back that way unless I am pretty certain I'm seeing all the key factors laid out that I can say, I think this guy's risk of acting out is low. Until I see that, I'm not telling my wife to say, hey, go and see if you can start doing that reconnection work.
For alcoholics, they typically even though they're recovering and they're beating their addiction, they typically go to meetings to continue to make sure that they're strong in that space. Is that a similar thing, a recommendation, Eddie, for sexual addictions? That
Absolutely.
as you're recovering, and even if you've come over that hump and you've restored the safety within your marriage and the boundaries and everything, is it that it's recommended that they may go back to meetings and have these conversations just to keep strong in the recovery process?
Right, absolutely. I mean, we're coming out and we're doing 90, in 90, 90 meetings, 90 days. We're starting right there. But then we're going to get into a community. Community is important. The lone wolf will fail.
Yeah.
And even for the women, my wife gets them into a community also, so that they can be surrounded by like-minded people who have gone through. And that answers the point that you made before, Michelle, about the fact of shame. Oh, okay, other women have gone through this too.
Yeah.
We're like a sisterhood in a sense. Yeah, there's still some shame about them, about all of it, but still, it just empowers them more.
Right.
And especially as you sit and you listen to how people have handled different circumstances and situations. And I encourage my men, as I move them on, I said, your group, that is your way of life. Those guys, you should be in that group for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And if that group breaks down for some reason, we got to move you into a new group. Because again, you don't need to be in therapy for the rest of your life, but you do need to at least be in some kind of a group therapy.
Accountability partners.
Exactly.
Yeah, to hold you accountable. Eddie, talk to me about your book. You are an author. Yes, sir, aren't you?
Yes, I've authored 2 books thus far.
Okay.
The first book was what the heck's the name of the first book? Yeah, removing your shame label. Learning how to break from shame and feel God's love. And my second book has been this one called Going Deeper.
Yes.
How the Inner Child Impacts Your Sexual Addiction. And again, it goes back to the idea that I believe it is our childhood pain point that drive our addiction. What's really interesting about this book, Michelle, is that everybody who's read it, including the leaders in the industry, have all said, you know what, you could take the word sexual out of here and you could use any addiction to describe these different kids. And what I've done is I've identified 9 different children. This is the emotionally voided child who really can't feel emotions, doesn't understand what it's like, is very afraid to be vulnerable. There are 9 different kids that I've created in this, and they're all based on the work I've done with men over the years, seeing what their pain points are. Like, for example, the bored child, or the unnoticed, the unaffirmed child, the need for control, and of course the early sexually stimulated or sexually abused child.
Nice. I'm going to get that book, because I heard you say that it can be used in any area. Just take the word sexual out. But it's good to understand how people originate from, what their thoughts are, what stems them, because we're relational people, so we're going to be in relationships with different types of people, so it would be a good identifier to understand the different traits and things, because sometimes with men it's very, it's very hard for them to express themselves, to be sensitive, because of suck it up, be a man, things that they may have been taught of when they were younger. So I think for us as women, if we can meet them halfway, or just understand what some of the things or challenges that they're dealing with as a man, that can help us.
And now you're on the subject of my third book that I'm writing. Going even deeper, helping men do relationships.
Wow.
Because they don't know how to do relationships. They don't know how to be emotionally connected. They don't know how to be outwardly focused. They don't know how to be curious. I've identified 15 what I call blind spots that keep a man from having a true, nurturing, and healthy relationship.
I like that book. When is that book coming out, Eddie?
I'm thinking probably late spring, early summer.
Ooh, I want that one. I want that one.
I do too. I want it too.
That's going to have some keys of information there, Eddie. I got to have that one. I got to have that one. How can the people find you? You are here in Georgia. You're north of Atlanta. So people that are listening are probably going to want to call and see and get some consultation. How can people find you, Eddie?
Yes, they can. I'm over in Marietta, Georgia. First, let me say this, though, because I don't want to disappoint people, that I am not taking new clients at this time. I have not been taking new clients for months. Again, as I said, ever since the book came out.
Yeah.
I was busy before. I had maybe a 1 or 2 week wait time. Now I have a 2-3 month wait time.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that's a very bitter sweet kind of thing.
Understood.
Because you want to help everybody who calls. So anyway, I'm not doing that. However, you can reach me at edcappa, EDCAPPA @gmail.com. There's also a couple groups that are online on Facebook. There's the Inner Child Recovery Process discussion board. Somebody started a like a fan club.
Yeah, Facebook page.
You can go on there, and I show up quite a bit doing that. You could Google Capparucci and YouTube. You'll find all kind of videos. A lot of them are about help for women who have been betrayed.
Awesome.
That's actually my podcast that I do, Getting to the Other Side. So you could find some of that stuff there. But again, it's edcappa, EDCAPPA @gmail.com.
Do you have any colleagues or any other ways that people can get therapy? We respect, and that's awesome that you're busy, because that means you're doing great work. But it's unfortunate because that means that there are a lot of people that need your services, and you're just one man. Is there any other way that people can get some help since you're pretty busy?
And actually what's happened is, see, when the people have been calling me, and I told you people calling not just throughout the country, throughout the world. I first said, I go, well, I'll find you a sex addiction therapist. They go, no, we want a sex addiction therapist that does inner child work. So what I've done, because I was only me, what I've done is I've created a training program for clinicians that will be launched in November, and we are going to train, I hope, over 150 clinicians throughout the world.
Wow.
We haven't even started promoting it yet, and I already have almost 50, including somebody from Israel and somebody from France who will be doing it.
Wow.
But I do have a couple coaches, and I have a counselor who I've trained already, so we could do that. I also have on my website, innerchild-sexaddiction.com, a 12-week online program.
Okay.
If somebody wants to walk through that, and I make myself available for about 10 or 15 minutes every week to answer questions. I priced it so that it's like you see me 3 times. I wanted people to get this help.
Yes.
And this will walk you through everything that I do when I'm bringing somebody through the whole inner child recovery process.
Awesome.
So again, that's innerchild-sexaddiction.com. Yeah, no, definitely reach out. I take everybody's call. I try to find a place for them. I just, again, because that's why God put me here, and that's what I'm here to do. So.
Can we get these conversations back in school, Eddie? Is it maybe about funding or we just don't have the guidance counselors or people in place like we used to?
I think people are so in the school setting. I think right now, the culture is more about acceptance. How do we teach people to accept and tolerate, which is a wonderful thing. We need that.
Right.
But that seems to be 90%. That's where everything went. And we're leaving out a very important segment of what the dialogue needs to be, and that's about healthy sexuality. And what I mean by that is I mean sex that comes with good self-worth and self-esteem.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
I got you. Got you. Got you. Eddie, this was great. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you. I want to just thank everybody that was listening. Today's show was powered by Dignified Diva. I had Adalia here a couple of weeks ago. Awesome young lady doing some phenomenal work for women. It's all about helping women that are homeless, and it's just trying to give them a little class and a little dignity as they receive toiletries and different items. And so her mission has been to collect purses, lightly used or no longer wanted purses, fill them up with hygiene products so that she can turn around and give these bags back to women that are unfortunately living in homeless shelters or in the streets. So this is Dignify a Diva. Feel free to reach out to them, make a donation. I know people are home. You have been home for the last 7 months, cleaning out your closet, purging, getting rid of things that you no longer need. Please feel free to give those unwanted pocketbooks, toiletries. We need toothbrush, toothpaste, shower caps, feminine products. These are things that women need that are living on the streets or are living in transitional places or homes. Feel free to reach out to Dignify a Diva. This is their official IG tag. They are also on Facebook. Reach out to them. Make your donations to them. We'll take the used bags. We'll take the toiletries. We want to get ahead of it before the end of the year. Everybody likes to give around Christmas, and that's great. But there are 11 other months in the year where women need our help. So feel free to reach out to them. Thank you so much, guys, for powering our show today, being a sponsor and a supporter of today's show. That's my time for today. You know me. I'm Real Chicks Rock. I am everywhere. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. We have a website, realchicksrock.com. We are pushing masks and pushing t-shirts. We got merchandise over there. Feel free to go over there and check us out and get those products that you like. We love it. We love you guys. Go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel over there as well. This show will be uploaded there within the next few days. This has been a very informative conversation. Thank you so much, Eddie, for your time. Thank you all, guys, for listening. Until next time, you be well, take care, and continue to rock on.